What's up, everybody? It's Chad. We're back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. We got a good episode for y'all lined up today, but first let me introduce my guest, Josh Walker from Sacred Soul Farm.
What's up, everybody?
How's it going, man? You're up in Socorro, right?
Yeah, so actually it's just north of Socorro in Limitar, but I just refer to Socorro because everybody knows that a little bit better.
Yeah, fair enough. You know, it's like someone from Mesilla saying they're just from Cruces to make it easier. But thank you for joining me again. If some of you didn't know, Josh actually has joined me on the show previously. We're bringing him on again, getting an update and everything, and hear what he has going on. Plus, I'd love to hear his perspective on the other topics we have going on today. As I advertised in my post before, we are going to be talking about CCD's official announcement to the new track and trace system, as well as I contacted the Department of Health today about some BioTrack questions, as well as they gave me a psilocybin update as well too. So that was nice of them. Shout out to them. But yeah, we'll get on with the episode today. Josh, thank you again for joining me. But for those who may not know who you are, could you give us an introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me back. My name's Josh. My farm is Sacred Soul Farm, located in Limitar, New Mexico. I'm a micro producer. I'm a sole operation in terms of it's just me running everything from seed to sale. And yeah, I do living soil, light deprivation greenhouse. I try and stick to the plant's natural rhythm, but yeah, I just do a little bit of dry amendments and yeah.
Nice, man. And I've been noticing here in New Mexico specifically, the living soil situation is kind of expanding more. More people are starting to go towards that and navigate and kind of gravitate towards that. I kind of noticed in New Mexico, we tend to do the hippie shit first, or kind of like a little bit lean more that way, which is fine. But other states are kind of fighting it. They're like, no, salt's for life. But I kind of feel here the trend is starting to go towards living soil, organics, and situations like that. And to be honest, there's some really great farms yourself, even Carver Family Farm up north, down here in Cruces, Mama's Boy does it. They're all kind of dabbling in it. And to be honest, they do it great, and it works out really well for the situation and the grow. You're not constantly trying to fill buckets up or put soil in a bunch of buckets because you have the soil there and then you're just amending. And of course you can add and do stuff there, but for the most part, you're not as doing as much prep labor as I feel anyway. Correct me if I'm wrong, with like buckets and stuff.
No, for sure. I think what really in the long term is cost. Like overhead cost to do living soil can really be expensive. And yes, like your initial input can definitely be a lot of work, a lot of maintenance. But over time, as you balance out the soil and the microbes and everything going on there, in terms of the anatomy, the chemistry, and biology, that starts to work on its own and it starts to feed itself. And you're having to do less and less input in that sense. So, yeah, and you can probably tier it out in different levels of how extreme you want to go to the living soil. I don't think there's really there's the category of it, but I don't really see, there's like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a consistent bar that people follow. There's so many different aspects to how you can do it, and that can get into regenerative farming with polyculture and permaculture and different things that you can really go to extreme levels, but that does cause more work and different things like that. So I think it just depends on how much you want to do and how you can do it with manpower and all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's a great point. That the overhead to get started is a lot of work, but through time, it gets less and less, which I like, because in a situation like hydro, it's the same every time. Throughout time, what you did 4 years ago, it still takes you roughly around the same time to do today.
Yeah, for sure. And I think people, like, we're talking about the consumers, I think they're becoming more curious because you can really, people who know what they're doing, the terps, you can just really tell the difference. And if we can get off the THC high horse and start gearing more people towards the terpene percentage and what that looks like as a whole and why that's important. And obviously THC is involved in that circle, but yeah, there's just more to it than that. And when you can taste it and you can feel the effect difference, you're just going to start wanting more of that, even if they don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. Because remember back in the day, and people have mentioned this several times even on my show, you didn't really get a choice of THC levels back in the day when it came to buying from your dealer and shit like that, in the traditional market. You didn't know numbers. Numbers didn't exist. Testing wasn't there. If it smelled good, if it tastes good, if it smoked good, it was good shit. And I think we do need to remind people that that is still a valid way to get your cannabis today. You don't have to just solely go off the numbers. Now, I get it, being the humans that we are, we like numbers and stuff like that. And I do hope we start shifting to adding the total active cannabinoid kind of situation, not just THC, have CBD, CBG, CBN, the other minor ones, as well as terpenes and stuff like that too, added to all that number. And then from there you can break it down. But yeah, we are doing a better job at getting the consumer away from this whole THC debacle we got ourselves into. But it's taking time. Some consumers, you got those old heads that just, they like what they like. They don't care. I want 90% THC. That's all I want. By all means, whatever. But it's slowly starting to chip away, especially with the younger consumers getting older and becoming age, becoming a little more open to being educated. I feel like they're the ones who are kind of leading that charge. Like, no, it's not all about that, blah, blah, blah. But the damn vapes, dude.
Well, I think, I was looking into it, and I think the influence behind how people are seeing cannabis, like influencers, stuff like that, that's just kind of far-fetched from, like, for me, what farm to table, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it'd be like farm to shelf for dispensaries. Just knowing the process and that it just doesn't show up like that.
Yeah.
And if I could tell somebody the work and energy that goes into doing a greenhouse or an outdoor grow, and there's much more physical labor, that I think that should be compensated for, but it's also the decision that I've made to grow that way.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I weigh that on a scale of, like, there are different ways to grow cannabis, and then that there are different overheads for me as the producer, and that to the consumer, if they care that much about knowing the process, but that's a whole story for a bud tender to tell. And a lot of the time, if you're trying to push, if you're doing a turn and burn type business, it's not really about that. So yeah, just finding that balance of like there's a way to do this, but how do we do it? Do we educate the bud tenders and they educate consumers? Do we put together a platform that there's like an educational board of people who can teach different arms of the industry, from like production, manufacturing, retail, that kind of thing, so that we can start a foundation of education in that way, and that way that the message is not being like a game of telephone, where like one person's getting information and then 2 or 3 dispensaries later, someone's being told something different.
That's kind of what we have right now. Because most influencers, dispensaries, advocates, we all aren't in the same group to talk to each other. Because even now, I'm watching these newer influencers pop up. They get like 7,000 views or whatever, and they're giving information, but not all of it's correct. Or it's a little misleading, or they're just going off of what the news article said. And so they're just kind of parroting versus reading and digging into it, or reading legislation to see what it actually says and giving people a different perspective. Or talking to someone who works in that area of the government and getting clarification. They're just going off of that. And that's what worries me too. And I wish that we all did kind of work together a little bit closely that way. But real life really doesn't always work that way, and that sucks.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, you know.
And New Mexico industry is really small too. Like if you
Mhm.
really think about it, the states, it's a big state, but it's very consolidated in these big areas, and that can get clicky.
Yeah.
That can cause speed bumps with other people, and that can make it difficult to collaborate and get to see the same perspective on whatever it may be, education or pricing of product.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing with retails, I'm sure. So.
Definitely. And already there's this disparity between northern New Mexico and southern New Mexico. And then you add the cannabis industry and you throw it on there. And then on top of it, nail in the coffin, you have a border check in between them. And so you have the issue, not only clickiness, but then the industry stays separate by product because of that. And I've had people talked about it on the show many times. We've talked about it, that there's certain products you don't find in northern New Mexico from southern New Mexico or other places because of that, and vice versa. Like I go to Albuquerque and I'm like, what brand is this? Or, oh, you don't know who that is? I'm like, well, no, I'm asking you. And then, like northern people come down here, oh shit, I never had this before, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, they don't want to chance it through the border check. So it's already kind of like in that sense that way. But, it could get better. And I think it will, because southern New Mexico didn't really have much of a cannabis community before legalization. It was all up north, like in Albuquerque and stuff, because that's where all the dispensaries were. That's where a majority of the patients are, even today. But Sutherland Park, man, that changed things night and day. And
crazy? I haven't been down there yet, dude.
Bro, you got to come down sometime. I'll show you around and stuff. It is crazy out here.
Yeah, I need to get down there for sure. I'm going to start making more time to do like the pop-ups and stuff versus just being on the farm so much. So
nice, man. Well, it'll be good to see you and stuff. We'll be doing pop-ups more here and there too, so I'm sure I'll see you. But let's get back on the conversation about your company and stuff, dude. Let's get an update. What's changed since the last time that we talked?
Yeah, just realistically, standard operating procedures have constantly shifting to make things more efficient. I did a winter grow this last year, and that turned out to be really good. It was the first time I've done it, and having more control of the temperature, not having to fight the heat and the just super intense UVs and stuff during even a June harvest. Start to cook those terps a little bit. But yeah, I've got a couple of part-timers that actually come up from Cruces, and that's been super helpful for me. I have a new daughter. She's 9 weeks old. So
congrats.
Thank you, man. Yeah, so having 2 kids and running a business has been a hell of a trying to figure that balance out and the timing and all that stuff. So that's been the biggest change so far, is just the addition of the family member and having to balance that with work life. My toddler's with me 6 hours a day. So yeah, really just shifting how to run a business and be a dad and, stay present at home and everything. Cause the farm, I live where I work. So the greenhouse is maybe like 200, 300 feet from my house.
Yeah.
So yeah, that separation can be a little bit difficult, but yeah, man, just expanding. I've been looking at getting some brand ambassadors in different parts of the state, because I can't be everywhere at once. Yeah, just like representing the product and showcasing it, taking samples to dispensaries that I can't go to. Yeah, just trying to spread out like that. And then also, I was just saying, like, doing more pop-ups to show my face to the brand and things like that. But yeah, I've also just been more open to white labeling, dude. It's nice. Just like, it's less work for me to have to do all the marketing and everything, and I'm still providing a quality product, and I don't really need that recognition. At first, when I first started all this, it was kind of like, I need to be known across the state, and now it's just kind of like, I'd just rather provide good medicine, get paid, and just, go about my life.
Yeah, I feel that too, because we love making the art, putting the jars together and stuff in the boxes.
Yeah.
But we also don't mind when someone buys bulk and they can do whatever the hell they want with it after that. You want to white label it, we don't care. Like, it's yours to do whatever. And that is way easier. Less packaging, less labor. It's just, Here, jar, okay, bye.
Yeah, and that, like, being a segue, I think if with this new tracking system, I hope that that's in consideration that you can sell, like for me as a producer, selling a bunch of fresh frozen,
Mhm.
to a manufacturer. I hope that that's still an option with the new system. From what I could tell, producers' options are, I didn't see a fresh frozen thing on there, but that's just something that I'm gonna have to just learn as I go with something like that.
Definitely, and you hold that thought. We're actually the next conversation we're going to have after we talk about you is the new track and trace. And there's been a lot of questions that are similar to that, so I'd love to have that conversation, here in a little bit too. Because for sure, man, I'm always, well, especially lately, worried about the track and trace stuff because you know how that is.
Yeah.
But
yeah, anything farm, just running new genetics, trying not to circulate what everyone else is growing, makes it difficult to make sales, and dispensaries don't want to carry the same shit.
damn lemon cherry gelato, bro. Like
Dude,
I see it fucking everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, man, things are good at the farm. Can't ask for better, really.
Right? And so what's your favorite genetics you're growing right now at the time? That's something I've been meaning to ask.
Yeah, so I've got a strain called Skunk Lady, and that was from
Skunk Lady, I like that.
what's his name? It's not Thug Pug. I can't remember the name of the breeder. It'll come to me in a minute. I would say that strain particularly, and then there's a strain that I created called Caffeine, and that one is a heavy washer. It's a strain between coffee from Kaya at Pacific North Roots up in Northern California, and then that has been crossed with a crazy strain, which was Afghan Sour Diesel crossed with Blue Thunder.
Nice.
Which are like super heavy indicas.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of my genetic seed bank comes from the Mendocino County area in that like Emerald Triangle group of people when you were running land race genetics, things like that. So yeah, I'm just kind of going back to original strains to see if I can find washers, things that have that more like euphoric feel, like when Chronic first came to be Chronic, when you just get like super giggly, laughy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, bringing it back to what we remember versus, where it was pushed due to sales and, just wanting to make money. I like that because, I think we had the conversation about, what did we breed out by creating these high THC plants? Like what did we lose to gain that high number? Because back in the day, we all know 8% was like what it kind of topped out at. And then even 16% I still felt like was a good number because you had the higher THC, but you still had all those other cannabinoids in there and everything, and the flavor, and who knows else was in there that we haven't discovered yet, that now we may have lost forever. So bringing back that old school stuff, man, I'm all for it. Do you have any plans of breeding or anything like that?
I always say that I've got stuff on the back burner for that, and I've got pollen saved up. I've probably got 20 different pollen strains, some that are pushing 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have projects in my mind. I'm just trying to find the time and not cross pollinate my garden while I'm doing it. So luckily, I don't have any farms that are close enough to me that would be an issue that I know of. But yeah, I would say just kind of taking a pause really on the genetic thing and just running what I have. I've got over 200,000 seeds of different stuff. So my grandkids could have seeds, dude. Not that they would be viable in it all, but you know what I mean? It's just kind of like there's so many. And when you're doing the pheno hunts and you find a couple good ones, I just kind of stop when I find good ones in a strain versus continuing on to, make deeper lineages with that same strain or, doing back different crosses and shit like that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a lot of work, man. It's like, I want to sugarcoat it and say that it's easy, but man, doing the breeding projects and having to hunt through the seeds and collect the pollen and do all that shit, it's a lot of work.
No, it is, man. I understand 100%. But who knows, in the future, things could change, or,
I think that seeds breeding could be a big thing because of the whole, if I don't know, is the ban that happened on the hemp ban that you're no longer allowed to mail seeds.
Yeah, because they're going not by how much THC is on the plant, but the potential of the THC. So kind of like the parents.
Yeah, for sure. So there's
the
that.
potential.
Like in-state sales. I mean, even though you technically couldn't mail it because it's federally, involved that way, you could deliver seeds to whoever in your area. But that could be a thing down the road if people get tired of doing clones or running the same genetics as their neighbor, that kind of thing. Again, New Mexico's pretty small. There's only a handful of like clone companies, and a couple of them are really good. I've run showroom cultivation shit and no problems whatsoever. Super clean, good results. But a lot of people run his strains. So, nothing negative there. It's just I want to be different. I want to be out of the loop and just bring my own shit that no one else has. And naming the name of a strain, dude. Trying to find a new name is so difficult because that's the first thing people look at. Yeah. And if they don't like the name, well, it could be good shit, but the name sucks. So
it's playing that fine line between oversaturation and scarcity. You got to find like the in-between area where it's not too available, but not too rare, where no one's going to be like, I don't know what that is, I don't want it. What's up, Gino?
No, racehorse or weed.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, the game that he likes to play, racehorse or weed. Like you'll name a racehorse name off. Is it a weed cultivar or is it a racehorse? Right? Maybe we'll just start going off on racehorse names.
Yeah, I look at like street names. I look at businesses, like all kinds of crazy shit.
Right. Yeah, we all do. So, how do you feel the industry has changed for you since the last time we talked?
I think just the race for pricing and just that being like a thing to bring in a consumer, you know what I mean? And not really based off of the quality, but I'm not a retailer, so I should stop talking like I understand what it's like to go through hundreds of different, SKUs and inventory of sampling and trying everything. I'm sure that in itself is just a lot of work. So I don't know, man. I think what's just changed is just really, it's just who you know and keeping a good reputation. I think that's a big thing. If you've got beef with other people, just keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Or keep it between you and that person. Because, again, it's a small industry here. And I think that, I think the last time we talked, I was saying I'd like to see a lot more like unification in the industry. And I don't see that yet. I mean, with some people, I do. You know what I mean? Like, there are really great people out there, and maybe I just don't get out enough.
It's slowly starting to happen. So you're seeing it on a micro scale right now because you don't get out a lot, but it's happening very slowly. Yeah, it's happening slowly. More people are kind of also learning that other people exist, and I think that was another issue. Is that we're so spread out as a state that the people that would want to work with each other live 5 hours apart from each other, sometimes more. Like me, I'd love to work with a lot of people from Eastern New Mexico, but they're 5 hours from me, 4 or 5 hours. So, it's kind of hard to get over there. Drive to the Permian Basin, cover my mouth because it stinks, like all that good stuff. But yeah, I kind of feel it's slowly happening. And there's a lot of changes that are coming up. And actually, I even got word of even more changes when it comes to like certain cannabis companies selling and either leaving the industry, altogether here in New Mexico. And, there's a lot of big companies trying to buy other companies and, stuff like that going on. And this leads into my next question. Where do you feel, or how do you feel the important role of the craft micro producer going further in the future?
I think it'll level out to where it's more of a demand.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, but depends. New Mexico is kind of a budget-friendly state, right? So if you got to have good quality, but it's got to be reasonable for the consumer.
Yeah.
And that means for the retailer who's wholesale and purchasing too. So I think that the craft thing has its place, but like you said, it's about finding where those, I'm going to say, hole in the wall spots, for lack of a better term, because it seems to be kind of hard to find places that consistently carry good product. And I say good product because I'm a snob. Like, I would say 3 out of 5 dispensaries I go to, I'm not satisfied with what I get.
That's fair.
I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. I try to go to deli dispensaries so I can smell it, see it, versus that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that there's a place for it though, man. More and more people are wanting that craft, even if it's not craft, if they can taste the difference and they can feel it, I think that that's what they're going to move towards. Especially if it's in the same range for the budget. And
100%.
At this point, yeah, I'm not like trying to get rich in this game. I'm just trying to be able to live a chill life with my fam and just pay the bills, dude.
Yeah.
So if I can do that and still be in that cultural position where I enjoy conversations with consumers, I enjoy conversations with other business owners. And yeah, I'm not going to be friends with everybody, but at the same time, like I want that cultural connection piece. And I think that follows craft and small scale, limited batch, kind of however you want to promote it in that sense.
100%.
For me, all those like terms just mean like community to me, and like cultural community, not just like New Mexico based community, but like, oh, we have that experience of like, yeah, you could go to jail if you got caught with it back in the day, or your community could look at you like a piece of shit because you got caught with weed, and then that makes your family look bad or whatever the fuck reputation it is and that kind of stuff. So yeah, for me, I'm really passionate about it, man. And I think I'm sticking more to my roots these days, which is, rooted in the culture of cannabis, and that it's a lifestyle, not just something that I do for work, but it is work. So,
right. It's the balance of trying not to be a Brad and Chad.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I know that I can probably come across as like very snobbish or pretentious, but I don't care if everybody likes me, dude.
And it is what it is. There's people that don't like, some of the nicest people in the world because they don't smoke how they do or whatever. People have their reasons. Yeah, people always have their reasons. And yeah, it's not something to lose sleep over, feel like you're losing. Actually, one of the local dispensaries, she always has really great products. She's a local, one of the rare gems that you talked about. She's actually that place. And she told me, she said, you know what? I stopped giving a fuck what people think. I'm running my business how I think. I like the influencers and stuff. She stopped worrying about the opinions they have on her product and this and that and blah blah blah. Because sometimes those influencers, they will tell you one thing, but they still will smoke mids. I will smoke mids sometimes. I can't sit here and tell you that I'm going to sit here and smoke fire every day of the week. I love fire. I know what quality is, but can I, realistically smoke fire every day? No, it's not feasible right now.
For sure. And even as growers, dude, everything we grow is not fire. Just to put it out there. Yeah. 50% of the shit is crap, especially when you're starting from seed.
Yeah.
You just don't know what you're getting.
And shit fucks up. The other day, I was in my garden, my dog snuck in and broke one of my plants in half, and I got this little stubby fuck that's flowering.
Stubby butt.
Stubby butt, right?
The name of your new.
I know, right? She laid right on top of me, dude. It was only this big at the time, and she just laid right on it.
See, that's cool though. You got your dog in your garden. You know what I mean? That shit happens.
Yeah, it does. Leave it open, the dog around. I'm like, oh, dude, get out of here. Because, it's not for the fact that I want the dogs in there. They don't understand what plants they can be careful with and what plants they need to watch themselves over. So it's like one of those, they just don't know better. But they're so excited to be in this grassy area. They're like, oh, hell yeah, everything.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
So you can teach your dogs to grow.
I guess I could, but that's not what they're there for.
You're going to walk in there and the dog goes, no, not that one.
Smell it, pee on it. That's the one we don't keep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Or
That's
maybe
funny
it
to
is.
get
I don't know.
Right. So before we move on to the next topic, I want to ask you one more thing. What's one thing that you kind of hope changes in the industry? It could be legislatively, it could be communal wise, it could just be,
Yeah.
this company needs to stop charging me so much.
Yeah. No, for me, it just is the conversation and communication between the legislatures who are writing these things in and people who are actually like in the field.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that needs to be again like a board of people that represent a mass majority of people, like a cooperative, for example, that just is able to communicate to legislators like, hey, what you're writing right here doesn't make any logistical sense for the time. I'm just throwing this in for like what we've got coming.
Mhm.
The timing of it is not ideal because there's so much movement and wheels turning at that time of year that to change something and have people learn it and then having bulk product come in, I feel like it could be a train wreck of things. So I just think if there was communication between the two, that there would be less of the potential for a train wreck. Nothing's happened yet. It's all assumption based, right? Like, oh
Mhm.
God, this is going to be a nightmare of a situation. And those of us with experience in the industry know that it's going to be, at least for a little bit. And so, yeah, I think that would be very helpful because then that could trickle down into the businesses, not that they're going to be more friendly or connected, but when there's just an easier workflow, people just tend to get along better.
Definitely.
Things just move and it's a healthy environment. I made kind of a intense post the other day saying that New Mexico legislators just don't know anything about a healthy functioning cannabis industry. And I just mean that because I don't see them coming out here, not to my farm, but let's just say someone like PVP.
Mhm.
They've got like a 40,000 square foot greenhouse or some shit. And just one of them, that's one of them. I think they've got multiple. So go talk to someone like that. Go talk to someone like Mango or Cookies who have these, or Dark Matter, and have these multi-million-dollar operations and have that flow of, inventory and how that's going to work. Because me as a small farmer, I'm on BioTrack like a couple times a week.
Yeah.
It's not everyday hours a day. Like retailers, manufacturers, even places like Couchlog, stuff like that have mass orders to fill and how it operates and different stuff. So yeah, I just think that would be helpful in that sense. I think everything else in the industry is just kind of ebbing and flowing like legal cannabis does. There's never going to be like a perfect situation where everybody gets along. There's our events are happening, which are great. There's new companies coming in, which is great. There's old companies falling out. That's part of the cycle.
Exactly.
So I think that where we're at in terms of people wanting connoisseur level stuff, craft stuff, and then people who are just budgeting and are fine with smoking mints because they can get more of it. That's fine too. There's room for everything.
Yeah. I agree.
I think the change that I would like to see is the communication between like the legislator level and people who are just in the field.
Yeah, I agree. And my thing to piggyback on that is I feel it needs to be many groups of people within the state. We're so spread out, and individuals too. Because if you rely just on one group, you end up with a bunch of other people not being heard. And so I kind of feel different parts of the state maybe need to create their own groups and organizations, so that way when it comes time, they have the different voices versus just one voice or one voice representing a limited few. And that's what we had during the medical days. Until our advocacy group came in and we're like, no, we're the voice for the patients, damn it. And that patient voice made a big change,
For sure. Yeah, and when I talk with people about this, California is my reference because they have one called Mendocino Cannabis Alliance, and the MCA. They have like 50,000 members in there,
Oh
Sure,
wow.
their market's a lot bigger, but obviously it's a paid membership, but it's super cheap. It's like $50 or $100 or something.
Oh wow. Like a
And
year.
like with all those people that get that money, whoever's running the board of that, they take that money and they use it for someone who's in the legislative aspect of government, and they are the voice for the people, because then they can trickle down to the farmer who is struggling with sales with dispensaries or manufacturing, retail issues, whatever's going on that people are having issues with that need to be changed on that level. For in our case, it's like the tracking system. I think that should have been consolidated with people before that was made a thing, or a trial run.
Yeah.
If it has to happen, do a trial run. That's fine.
I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Let's get a couple people to sign up for that shit, and if it doesn't work, then at least the whole state's not in a freaking kerfuffle.
Well, our problem is we have a lot of corrupt politicians. So even ones that wrote the CRA will push shit that goes against the CRA and isn't good for us. And so we find those ones, but then they turn their back on us eventually. And it's kind of like,
Interesting.
yeah, it's like, okay, well, we thought you were the cannabis person, but you kind of turned on us there. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So
It'd be
like,
interesting. Yeah, for sure.
go ahead.
I was just going to say it'd be interesting to have somebody in the advocacy side that has also had experience in the field of cannabis.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who are on that legislative side aren't people who are in the field.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm one of few.
Connection, having that thing there where you have like the cooperative that has that level of communication would be huge, because then like the cooperatives have like quarterly or biannual meetings that they talk, and they have group meetings where 5,000 people show up or whatever, and it might be a public forum, it might not be, but at least they can go and show up and hear what's going on, and it's not just the state that's hosting these type of things. Because I get it, like a lot of people show up when the state has changes happening and people need to voice their opinion, like on the packaging thing that happening, people voiced up and put a pause to that, and so we'll see what turns with that too. But at the same time, that's just what I mean. You can't allow the government to dictate how we as business owners facilitate the business, because what they're doing affects our business, but we're the ones running it, not them.
100%. So I get you, man. Well, before we move on to our next topic and everything, before we talk everyone's ear off, and don't get to the topics we want to talk about, where can people find your product in the state?
Yeah, so as of right now, I believe that Connoisseur Cannabis down in Cruces is carrying my product. They actually bought most of my stuff before I left, so cool. I'm just going to leave it at them, that they are pretty much the ones that are holding my stuff at the moment.
Oh, yeah, you're on vacation and stuff, and then
that was crazy. Like being out of the loop for 30 days made me feel so discombobulated with even being back. I'm like, where do I jump back into this like train of movement?
Yeah, it doesn't stop.
I think too, like the whole tracking thing is slowing sales.
Well, let's jump into that then. Let's go into our next topic. The CCD has officially announced the new track and trace system. It's going to be called New Mexico Seed Number 2 Sales System. They did do a post, I think just 3 days ago, about it. They sent a bulletin out to everyone, that has, a license and everything. I actually got an email, a few emails in my inbox of the same one, people forwarding it to me. So like I opened it up and I was like, okay, I'll post it. Holy shit. I read the letters and everything. I've gone through it. And so I'm going to share with you guys, what's going on and what was said in it. So they announced that starting August 25th, they're going to start the migration to the new track and trace system. And it was made by RTS. Before I've told you guys that that's how we found out who did this. And that's just them confirming within that bulletin that, yes, it is RTS, or Real-Time Solutions from Albuquerque. They're the ones working on that. They are talking about the API, or I believe it stands for, what is it, like application programming interface or something like that. And I know if you're not like a techie person, that explanation doesn't help. Pretty much what it means is that two applications can talk to each other and work within the environment and, you know, kind of work together. That's what that means. That's why you have BioTrack and you have like Dutchie. And they work seamlessly together because of an API that talks to each other and allows them to work within each other's apps. So they're trying to make sure that the functionality of like Dutchie works with this new system. They're also going to provide us with training materials and videos and stuff. They didn't mention anything about a phone number to call or emails and such. So there's the, you know, well, what's going to happen in that situation when we need help right now, not in 48 hours or, you know, 2 business days or whatever. There's that aspect. I know you got a couple of things that you want to say too. I'm just going to explain to everybody real quick and then we'll get on the conversation for this for sure. I don't know how much help we're going to get. I do know this will be free. That has been clarified that, you know, this isn't going to be at cost, unlike BioTrack where it had the free version which sucked and then you had the paid version which didn't suck as much. I know some people got so used to it, they're just like, oh, it's not that bad of an application. Yeah, people back in the day thought DOS wasn't that bad of an application or computer system either. So, you know, things change, technology gets better, and we have to advance. Now, I do not like the way that they went about the change and everything, and that we'll talk about in a second. I just want to make sure I get you guys all the information. So this change is happening now that I'm telling you at the time of recording, less than 2 weeks. But when they announced it, we literally had to the day 2 weeks. And I feel that's unfair because all these companies have to migrate because they're telling you, make sure your inventory is correct. Don't do overcorrecting, undercorrecting, blah, 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 this and that, because we're going to migrate everything. You're going to get a brand new login. You're not going to use BioTrack. Now, someone else is going to use BioTrack, and that's a conversation after this one. I'm going to update you all on real quick because, you know, it gets even more weird. So you as a producer, retail, whatever, you're going to be using this new track and trace system, and you won't have to worry about BioTrack. You yourself will not be migrating the information. The state will be taking the BioTrack information and migrating it to this new application because they're not the same and they don't talk like that, I guess. So let's hope that the information is migrated correctly and people don't get in trouble when it's not their fault because the information just wasn't transferred over, or they have a lot of inventory that didn't get transferred over because of this as well. So congratulations, we have a new track and trace system, and it's going to be a huge shit show. And Gino, let the fuckery begin. So Josh, with all that information being out there and everything that you know as well, you know, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just think the timing is horrific.
Yes.
Just for producers, manufacturers, retailers, I think if it wasn't around harvest for most outdoor producers, including greenhouse grows, and even indoor, I'm not really sure what their timing is with this. I'm sure it's pretty close as well, but yeah, it's just going to be a train wreck, I think, because of all the new inventory that's coming in from each producer, going to manufacturers or just straight to retails, and everywhere in between. I think that I understand change, you know, that's kind of out of our hands at the government level, with contracts and things like that they've got going on. I understand that. I think having maybe more of an integration period as well, like doing like a test period, taking a few of the bigger companies, and even smaller micros, and just seeing how that pans out for the transition of product and everything like that. But yeah, I think the communication thing, I didn't really know about there not being like a support number to call. I'm sure they'll have something. You can't just leave people in the dark like that, but
right, you know, just go look at our YouTube video
until the last minute. So yeah, it was the 2-week notice thing is also kind of a little bit of a mind fuck, because it just makes people feel really rushed. And when you rush it, you miss stuff, you make mistakes. So it's like, we'll see. That's my 2 cents on it. I I wish they would have approached it differently. I actually talked with Matt from Can MM for a little bit. He's a neighbor of mine. So I walked over there when I heard the news and talked with him about that. And he was saying he was getting lots of calls about how this is going to go down. And it seemed like people were pretty chaotic about it and the announcement. And I understand that for sure. So yeah, we'll just see how it plays out. I mean, you know, hopefully the roll of the dice is good for everybody, but it probably won't be.
No, and you know, there's going to be, from what I read in the memorandum or the bulletin, there's going to be periods where we're going to have blackouts on BioTrack, or they're not going to be accessible. There's a whole new area for testing and stuff. They had answered that. Now, here's a few things that I've been getting questions about myself. What are they going to do with like fresh frozen? That's one thing that you brought up. Hash rosin, hash holes. Products like that. I don't even think they had, certain edibles and stuff like that on there. Are we going to run into the same thing in BioTrack where we had to essentially blanket categorize certain things that weren't that? Like with hash rosin, you have to like turn it to bubble hash, and then you turn it to like something else, and then another thing at the end. It has like 5 different like transformations before you end up with the smokable product. I get that people want to use what's familiar, but we can do something that this is a hash hole, this is hash rosin, or this is hash. Just in general, you generalize it that's fine. Hash.
Sure.
I haven't seen that either. So like the fresh frozen thing. What are we going to do? Are they going to be able to add more? Can we, as a license holder, request categories? Like what is going to happen? There's so many questions that we have, and they're not really giving us many answers on them. And it's kind of like, well, you're just going to have to wait and find out. And that's not really, that doesn't make you feel good as a business owner, because you want to know exactly what's going to happen, because they're the ones in charge telling us to do these things. But at the same time, like, you're just going to have to figure it out, so.
Yeah, because if it's not an option in the system, then that becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah.
It's a domino effect issue. If I can't sell a manufacturer, let's just say I want to sell you some fresh frozen, or I want to just not even sell you fresh frozen. You want to manufacture it for me, and we split the product. Mm-hmm. That's not an option on there either. So like, how the fuck am I supposed to, like either way there, I'm as a producer, I'm rocking a hard place.
Yeah.
So
even samples, like we're kind of up in the air. How are samples going to work? Or
I didn't see a lot of stuff on there. I briefly looked over it for maybe 2 minutes, so I can't really say that I'm well versed on it. But the 5 categories that I saw that the producer had options to left out some pretty big ones.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Because
also, like, what if you want to sell clones as part of a wholesale for your business?
Yeah.
I didn't really see that on there for a producer either.
Yeah, definitely. And those things are worrying. And so it's going to get really confusing. And I just hope there's a grace period. And they have give us a lot of leeway for at least a year on this whole situation. Like, understandable, give you guys a year, get used to it. We work out the kinks, you work out the kinks, you figure out how to train your employees, you figure out how to learn this, and then we'll start enforcement beyond that. Because you're telling people that have been using something for over 10 years sometimes to switch to something brand new, and you got old heads out there that, technology isn't the best for them, and learning something new is going to frustrate these people. It's going to frustrate me, and I'm a tech guy. I know I'm going to get frustrated.
Yeah.
And I know the rollout, it's going to be a little messy. They're trying to ensure us that it's not. I know government, the way that they're going about this, I've talked about it. The timeline sucks. They could have done a better job, at least January, because January to April is a pretty good window, not just for the farms, but for the retailers and everybody to train everybody. And there's not as much going on as there is from August to January 1st. Like there's a shit ton of stuff going on. You have Croptober, which kind of starts in August for the most part for some people, but then really kicks up September, October. All the way down to November for, like especially down here in southern New Mexico, really, goes on to about November. And then December, January is the holidays. And so you have everyone buying stuff for everyone for the holidays and stuff. And then, the New Year's kicks off and finally you get like the rest time. They could have waited for January 2nd to inform us that this was going to happen in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no doubt, man. For sure.
So we'll see what happens. That's pretty much all I have the information wise right now. I'm sure I'll get more as time goes on this. Do you have anything before we move on to Department of Health's track and trace situation conversation?
I don't think so. I think I'm not people to be just aware, like that are trying to do wholesaling, that might be slowed.
Yeah.
I'm already noticing that.
Yeah. Redundancies, have backups just in case. I know it's going to suck. Maybe use Excel or, Google Sheets to kind of help you out a little bit. I think some people already do that as well. On top of it, redundancies are always, a great idea. I use redundancies myself, it sucks ass, but it helps out, because if that information's gone from that database, you at least have a backup and you have something to help you out a little bit and give you a little bit of leeway.
Totally. That's all I have to say on that. That's my 2 cents.
100%. Well, we're going to keep it in a different conversation, but same at the same time. So Department of Health. So as you guys know, the Cannabis Control Division and the Department of Health do 2 in the one same thing. So we have a medical cannabis program that's kind of integrated with the CCD, but controlled by the Department of Health. They're the ones who issue cards. They're the ones who have the registry for the patients. And they did mention adequate supply, so I don't know if CCD went away from controlling adequate supply and allow the Department of Health to do it because they were reading the law to the sense that they control CCD, the adequate supply, not Department of Health. It'd be great if Department of Health were the ones that controlled that. And to what the conversation it sounded like, seems like they're kind of getting back to that. So Department of Health, I got word last week or earlier this week that they're going to stick with BioTrack. And I was like, shit, well, that's going to cause a lot of fucking issues. So a lot of things went through my head. I was like, I really hope it's more or less an API thing than it is, we have to, use both, for whatever reason. So I called Department of Health today and I actually asked them, hey, they didn't have much time to talk. The person I called, hey, what's going on with this track and trace thing with you guys in BioTrack? And they said, yes, we actually are sticking with BioTrack. We're not going to move to the new track and trace thing. That's a CCD thing. When we opened up the contract for the track and trace, BioTrack was the only company that applied. And to be honest, I've seen when that happens sometimes they don't announce it that well. Right before we adult sales started, the Department of Health opened up the licensing for the medical cannabis program, right, which is super limited and rarely ever happened. And they opened it up and only one license applied and one license got approved. And it was only open for like an hour or two, a couple hours. And they said, oh yeah, we opened it up. Anyone that knew about it could have applied, but only one company was ready and able to apply at that time. And of course they got their license and a couple weeks later, adult sales started and it didn't really even matter. So if this was a different timing, that would have been a huge scandal. It probably would have went to courts and stuff like that. But since adult sales started right after, they kind of skirted that. So the Department of Health doesn't have the best track record when it comes to something like that. And, kind of being as transparent as we'd hope. So I hope that they were very vocal and, RTS, the people that make the new track and trace system, hopefully they just weren't aware or didn't want to do it, whatever. And, BioTrack was a default winner. Now, here's my thing that I asked them. I said, okay, when it comes to retail, and I gave them a situation, when I go to buy, will the retailer have to go into BioTrack or anything like that? They said no. It's going to be API again. We're using that word a lot in this episode. It's going to be through an API again through the New Mexico track and trace system that it's going to work. So BioTrack will still be a part of our cannabis industry in some way, but it's going to be all done in the background through an API service. So hopefully, from my understanding as well, you won't have to log back into BioTrack ever again to track stuff at the dispensary, at the production level or manufacturing level. That's all going to be done on the backside. And what I was told is BioTrack BioTrack is going to be the one that holds the, patient registry and your adequate supply or your units and stuff. So that's really what they're using BioTrack for. It's not necessarily for anything else. So when you go and you check your units and stuff, I believe that they're using BioTrack now, and they're going to continue to use BioTrack to track that. So the New Mexico cell system is going to have that you went to, let's say, Top Crop, you bought a gram of rosin, then that's going to report to BioTrack, and then BioTrack will report that to Department of Health, so that way it'll track your units correctly. Because right now you can see exactly where you bought it, what time, how much, and how many units you have left, on their website. So I believe that's the way that it's going to work. It's not essentially going to be something that the retailer has to do or any of us. So I wanted people to be clear before that information gets out and it gets muddied and people start freaking out even more than they need to be already with this change. So on top of us going to a new seed and cell system, BioTrack is sticking around in some capacity for now. They have the contract for the time going forward. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on this whole situation with the Department of Health?
I heard that there was kind of a unit, like a record keeping issue, that a lot of patients that were going in had less units, or the units were off. Is that a BioTrack system thing, or is that?
That's a fraud issue, actually. So unfortunately, and this has been going on since the medical days, what used to happen in the medical days, if a patient was low on units, they would steal another patient's units for that patient so they can get the sale. And someone would go in and they don't have the units, and there's really not much they can do. Yeah. And now what will happen, and I've heard this story a couple times, it's not like too much of fraud, but it's kind of like, come on, buddy. If they have an issue with a patient and the manager or owner has a medical cannabis card, they will use their own units for that customer's sale to get the purchase, of the customer at a cheaper price, and to, give them some kind of customer support. I'm like, okay, whatever, that's your units, do whatever you want with it. Still kind of fucking weird. But there's also the people that straight up steal a patient's units for the sale, or a person or their friend or somebody. And there's nothing that we can do. I've called the DOH on this issue before, but it's literal fraud that is happening. And I don't know what their plan is in the future to prevent this, because there's a few people I've talked to that have had all of their units used up. And that's a 90-day rolling thing. So they have to wait 90 days for the units to come back. So you have to wait a long time. And that's something that I feel has been dumb for the longest time, waiting 90 days. But
I was going to say 90 days is a little excessive, maybe like 45 or something.
I petitioned 30 with the rule changes. Hawaii does 14 days, but they have like a 4-ounce kind of limit. And I kind of felt 30 days for our pretty much pound that we get, is more than suffice, or half pound, I think is what we get. Sorry. What we get is more than suffice, like that does more than enough for us and everything. And 30 days within it. But if someone can argue it differently, 14 days, maybe, who knows? But anyway, that issue. Huh?
No, that's interesting. I mean, just that different branches of the New Mexico government would choose, different contracts with. I get sticking with the same one if it's what works in your system. Like, why change it?
Yeah, and it looks like it's not going to be a seed to sell capacity. It's more or less just a tracking your patient's capacity, which that makes sense.
Like a record keep. It's almost like a extreme version of, like you said, Google Sheets or something, where they can just keep better. If they need an audit for whatever reason, they can literally look at every minute or transaction or whatever, like you were talking about.
Yeah, and with Schedule 3, this is going to be more of a mandatory thing for the states to do anyway. And I feel New Mexico on the medical part really set ourselves up for success when it comes to being a Schedule 3 entity. And we're pretty much just light switching it, like, oh, we're Schedule 3, okay, from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, there we go. Nothing really different we got to do. So I think they're just kind of trying to continue that. So those of you out there, don't freak out. BioTrack is going to be used, but it's going to be on the backside. You more than likely, and if it changes, I'll let you know, won't have to mess with it ever again. You'll get that new login for the new track and trace, and the medical patient stuff you won't have to mess with, because the only time that it is dictated to be medical cannabis is at the point of sales, and it depends on who's buying it. That is the only time. When it comes to manufacturing, we just put it in as a regular product, producers put it in as a regular product, and it doesn't change until it gets to the point of sale. So that's all I have for that one. Do you have anything before we move on to the very last and final update? I know this episode got a little long.
No, that's good.
Cool. All right. So we're going to move on to our very last one. Within that conversation, I got an update on our medical psilocybin program that's about to kick off here in probably the next few weeks, next couple months. I can't remember the exact date, but it is happening here very soon. So within that, I got an update that they're promulgating more rules for the production and manufacturing of psilocybin and stuff like that, and the patient stuff too. So if you want, you can go to the Department of Health website right now, and you can read those rules. If you do want to become a producer of psilocybin for the medical program here in New Mexico, the way to figure out how to do that are in the rules. That's what I was told. And if you read them and you notice, hey, these look pretty much like medical cannabis and cannabis, that's because it is. And what's funny is a lot of the psilocybin advocates that we were working with, they didn't want any of the stuff to be like cannabis. And they're like, oh, no, you guys did it wrong. We hate you. Oh, and they pretty much like kicked us out of everything. And, we didn't know what was going on. Still to this day, I have no clue. I really don't care. But they ended up with rules that are literally exactly cannabis. And I knew there was going to be no way that they can get around with that when it came to the legislature in the state. So they caused a big fit and everything, and created, people who have weird feelings about them and never sharing information just for the fact that of fear and things that they didn't understand. They didn't understand how government works. And this is how government works. So they're going to have a lot of the rules with the, it works. Good one, Gino. So this is how they're going to be doing it. It's going to be mostly pretty much close to cannabis. So if you are curious or want to be a psilocybin producer of some sort, and you already are in the cannabis industry and you have the capacity, the money, the time, by all means read it, and you might be able to get your license a little bit easier than someone who's jumping into it, because you already know the steps to go about getting your license. As it goes for the patients, same thing as well. If you're kind of curious how to become a patient in the medical psilocybin program, how it's going to work, all of that is laid out in the rules on the DOH website. Now, RLD/CCD's website and Department of Health's website are totally different. In my opinion, Department of Health's website is a little cluttered and a little harder to navigate than the CCD's. And the CCD's isn't the best to start out with either. So, that's telling you something. I've been navigating the New Mexico Department of Health website for many years now, and it's gone through different iterations, but it hasn't been completely decluttered yet. To get to certain things that I want, I'm like, why do I have to go here? And then, okay, this makes no sense. Okay, whatever. So you're going to have a hell of a time finding the rules sometimes. I hope that they've updated to where the rules are right in the front and the psilocybin tab is there and you can just click it and everything's there. I hope. I'm going to check it out after this episode and read the rules myself, because I haven't read them. And next week on that episode, I'm going to go through some of these rules with you guys and kind of read through them and give you my interpretation of what I kind of feel is going on. And then who knows, maybe some of y'all have read it by then too as well. But we'll see what happens, as I usually say, because no rollout is going to be perfect, and no rollout can be perfect, just for the fact that there are unknown variables that we sometimes just can't plan for. More than luck to the Department of Health. They've been working very, very hard on this. They have been like blazing through this, to be honest. So kudos to them on a job well done on getting this done. Could things be better? Of course, this and that, and things in the future are going to need to change. And they actually left a lot of the psilocybin program up to the rule-making process versus the law-making. So that gives us a lot of wiggle room versus like the medical cannabis program that needed a lot of law changes to get it where it was pre-2022 and 2021. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I'll probably become a medical psilocybin patient myself as well. And we'll see if I produce some psilocybin myself too in the future. So what are the plans for you, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. I think it's great to have the option for people, whether it's therapeutic or whether it's recreational. I'm not really sure exactly. I've got to read too. I haven't read anything.
It's purely medical. It's actually going to be like a inside the office kind of space thing. Like
gotcha. That's what I kind of was wondering. Like, is there going to be like a distribution for that, or how does that?
No dispensaries. There won't be dispensaries or anything. It'll be at your doctor's office, and you don't possess it or grow it or anything. It's going to be all done, at your doctor's, and they have the discretion to make it an office or something cool. So
I think it's great. Everything from athletes to hospice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot of room for that. So yeah, if I could, I'd love to learn how to grow it, because then I could just take the inoculative blocks and put them in my beds in my garden in the greenhouse.
There you go, dude. See, you could have like a whole little cycle system going on and everything.
Circle. Yeah, man. For sure. I think that's pretty dope.
Yeah, I do
That's
too,
cool.
and thank you for the Department of Health. They didn't have to update me on that because I called for something different. They just happened to be in a meeting, and I figured I'd ask, hey, well, what's going on with that? And I'll give everybody an update. And so that's everything that's going on. So now they have the production, manufacturing, and of course, patient rolls up now too. And of course, I think they have a couple more things to come out here in the next few months. And I think by the end of the year, the program should be up and running. So I'm excited to see about it. New Mexico is one of the first states, to do medical psilocybin. Of course, we weren't the first, but we're one of the first and few to do it. And I think we're going to do it differently than everyone else, like we do. And we're not going to try to make it as expensive as like Colorado's made it. So, good luck to the people out there who plan on becoming producers in the medical psilocybin program. Of course, the doctors out there who are going to be, administering this to people. Thank you so much for, being here and being this brave to being a part of something so new. And of course, to Department of Health again for, trailblazing this and, blazing through everything and getting the rules out to us. So that's everything I have on this today. Do you have anything else before we end the show today, Senor?
Nah, man, I just appreciate you guys hosting me and just, always keeping everybody informed and educated on what's going on. I know that it takes a lot of reading to do that, to get like a 30-second clip, potentially take a lot of reading. So that's much appreciated. And yeah, man, just look forward to meeting a lot of new people, hopefully getting some new business ventures going on. And yeah, just good luck to everybody in this transition time. And just, just remember to smoke a lot of weed.
Right. All right, everybody, that's everything I have this week. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, whatever you got to do to stay in the know. And as we're feeling it right now, good luck and let the fuckery begin. So we'll see y'all here next week and in the next few weeks, and we'll see how it goes with this new stuff. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. Shoots.
Later, fam.
Grassy.